Welcome back, everyone, to the fourth match in this very exciting World Cup Grand Final of VGC, put on by Victory Road and sponsored by the ever-amazing Elgato. I'm Lou Cromie, sadly not joined by Gimli, but very excited to be joined by Jamie Boyd. How are you doing, Jamie?
Yeah, it's been a great final so far, 2-1. So still every match to play for at this point. That's exactly what you want from a spectator's point of view. Spain getting that early momentum, but Italy are fighting back, so it's really good to see.
Yeah, this is what I love. You know, Spain coming out really strong, 2-0, brilliant. And then Italy able to take that one back. And I really hope the momentum does start to swing up. It would be lovely to get to that game 7. Maybe not so much for the players with the pressure on their shoulders, but for us as the casters and spectators on the stream, you guys want to be in that game 7 wondering who is going to win. So we will have to see how the tournament is going to play out. But 2-1, still very close at this stage.
Yeah, and so we were promised by the managers. Both of them said that you don't want to make it to the 3-3. So that is still definitely on the cards on the table at the moment. So we'll have to see if that is going to be the case. But we can move on to this match between Antonio and William for Spain and Italy. So we can have a look at how the players have done so far throughout this tournament. And you can see there we have moved on to the 2-1 record. We are going to be featuring William Bassolino versus Antonio Sánchez for this next match. So still the 2-1 record, going to be just passing the halfway mark with this match.
Yeah, exactly. And the halfway point is really where the anticipation and tension will start to build up. So I'm very looking forward to seeing how after this game, whether Spain are going to be able to maintain that lead or whether Italy are going to pull it 2-2. But let's take a look at kind of how our players have done through this tournament so far, like you mentioned there, Jamie. And, you know, again, we've got 6-1 and 6-2 records, very good records so far. And nice to see a mix of different teams being used by both of these players.
Yeah, it seems like they're mixing up most weeks, and some slightly unique Pokemon as well. Like the Necrozma Dusk main is a restricted we don't see very often at all, but Antonio was going to be bringing that one for that 1 week in the top 16. Yeah, some really cool teams coming out from both these players, and some really good consistency. 6-1 and 6-2 are very good records going across this tournament. So we'll have to see which one of them is going to be able to take their 7th win.
Yes, exactly. Nice to see the mix of Pokemon, like you said. So let's have a closer look at what Pokemon they will actually be bringing to this grand final match. Spain versus Italy, very intense at this point. But let's dive into Spain first of all and take a look at Antonio's team. You've got that Calyrex, Shadow Rider, the Incineroar, Rillaboom, Urshifu, Whimsicott, and Nihilego. Those 6 Pokemon we have seen, you know, a lot throughout this tournament. I wonder if it's going to be the good, solid choice to try and get the victory for Antonio.
Yeah, you've seen these 6 Pokemon together quite often, but it does vary depending on how each of the trainers want to be training their Pokemon, which items the Pokemon are going to be holding. We've seen a lot of Whimsicott drop that Focus Sash to put it onto something like the Calyrex and items like the Rocky Helmet picking up on Whimsicott. You could still just have the Life Orb on the Calyrex and the Focus Sash on the Whimsicott. You're almost certainly going to be having something like the Power Herb Meteor Beam on the Nihilego, and you can have something like the Choice Scarf or the Mystic Water on the Urshifu. Even though it's the same 6 Pokemon that you see very often with the Calyrex Shadow Rider team, you can mix it up completely depending on your own style.
Yeah, exactly. However the player wants to kind of pilot the team and get those ball positionings in place can really determine the outcome of a match with these 6. Let's throw over to the opposing side, though, and take a look at the 6 Pokemon he will be facing on William's team. You've got that Groudon, Cherrim, Entei, Rillaboom, Stakataka, and Dragapult. I know our co-caster May will be very happy to see the Cherrim in action here.
Yeah, it definitely could be coming to this match because it does give that special defense boost when you get the Flower Gift going, as well as that attack boost. And giving yourself a special defense boost against some Astral Barrages is definitely something you might want to be doing here. The Dragapult does naturally underspeed the Calyrex, but is very often carrying Sucker Punch in this format, mainly because of the Calyrex as well. So we'll have to see if that's going to be coming into this match. Usually it's going to be a physical variant of the Dragapult because of that Cherrim. Lots of physical attackers on the team, pretty much all of them have the potential to be physical attackers on the team to make use of that Flower Gift. Sometimes you mix it up, sometimes you have the Special Eruption on the Entei, sometimes you do have the Choice Specs on the Dragapult as well, but the Cherrim could be a very key factor going into this game, especially with that special defense boost it can give.
Yeah, it looks like game 1 will certainly be a good information game for us to kind of see how William has decided to train his Pokemon, whether you've gone for those physical or special variants. So interesting to see how they're going to match up against each other, particularly in that team preview. I really like the idea of kind of the Groudon coming out into the fray as well, bringing that Sun onto the battlefield. You seem quite confident, Jamie, that it's going to be likely shown in this match.
It does often carry Sucker Punch, mainly for Calyrex, so it depends if how confident you are in dealing with the Calyrex without it. You do often see a Choice Scarf on the Entei. You can be seeing Crunch come out from the Entei as well. So we'll have to see what options both of these players are going to be bringing in this match, which we can jump into now.
Yeah, exactly. Here we are with the team preview, and you can see a little sneak peek at some of the items on here. Again, no surprise, it was something like a Life Orb on the Calyrex. Nice to see the Assault Vest on the Rillaboom and Power Herb on Nihilego as well. But the Rocky Helmet on the Whimsicott, I like that addition, Jamie.
It's been picking up quite a lot because you do often get faked out on the Whimsicott, and getting some extra chip onto the opposing Pokemon, every little bit of chip helps, especially when you're rocking a Calyrex Shadow Rider, because if they're suddenly put into Astral Barrage range, that's going to be a KO and also a grenade booster to boot as well. So it does help out with those margins of whether you get that KO or you don't, because a lot of Pokemon do EV to be able to survive that attack coming out from Calyrex, and then if you've taken a sick damage already, then you're going to be put in range. So it's a very, very unique item choice on the Whimsicott, and it has been picking up quite in popularity quite a lot. It does make a lot of sense, especially paired with the Calyrex, and the focus Sash is actually on the Urshifu on this team. We don't see too many Sash Urshifus at this point. It does often be either the Choice Scarf variant or the water boosting item, whether that's the Mystic Water or any of the variants of that item, but Focus Sash going to be the choice for the Urshifu here. Be quite interesting not having it on the Calyrex or the Whimsicott, opting for that big power coming out from the Life Orb from the Calyrex. We'll have to see if that Calyrex can be put a stop to, whether that's going to be something like the Choice Scarf Entei. Sometimes do opt the Assault Vest with the Groudons just to get bulk itself out rather than opting to outspeed, or the Dragapult, whether it's able to get some of those Phantom Forces into the Calyrex, or if it does carry that Psycho Punch.
Yeah, well, let's see the leads jumping out into the fray. We've got Stack Attacker and Rillaboom coming out onto the battlefield here, going to be setting that grassy terrain and have the fake out utility going forward, as it is the Whimsicott and the Calyrex there for Antonio. So again, interesting to see the support Pokemon Whimsicott next to the big powerhouse that is that Calyrex.
Stack Attack is a very good lead against these two Pokemon. You do get to pretty much guarantee Trick Room at this point if you just go for the fake out into the Whimsicott. You've got to assume that the Stack Attacker would be able to survive an Astral Barrage coming out from even a Choice Specs Calyrex, so you should be able to get that Trick Room up if you just go for that fake out into the Whimsicott. You will take a little bit of Rocky Helmet Chip, as we have seen that is the item on the Whimsicott, but that's almost certainly going to be worth it because you want to be moving first against the Calyrex Shadow Rider teams, and that's usually not the case because it's paired with this Whimsicott. The Whimsicott just gets to go for that Prankster Tailwind, and then because of your naturally high speed with the Calyrex as well, you're always going to be moving first with the Astral Barrages. But if you get that Trick Room going, Calyrex is going to have its speed completely flipped. It's always going to be the slowest Pokemon, and then you'll be able to deal with it a lot easier.
Rillaboom just going straight for that fake out into the Whimsicott. Like you said, you can see the Rocky Helmet Chip going down as well onto that opposing Rillaboom, as Calyrex does go for the Astral Barrage here. So going to be able to deal some damage to both the Williams Pokemon here, put them in a more vulnerable situation thanks to the Life Orb boost there. You can see really taking them both down into the orange. But as you mentioned, Jamie, Stack Attacker is really free to set up that Trick Room, and this is where the speed issues now do arise for that Calyrex going forward.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit awkward for the Calyrex. So almost certainly going to be in range of the Gyro that come out from the Stack Attacker. And if the Rillaboom is carrying knockoff as well, that should still be able to pick up the KO. Maybe even just a Wood Hammer, if it's carrying that as well, should be able to pick up the knockout on the Calyrex. You managed to avoid a potential taunt that could come out from the Whimsicott. Now you've just got to contend with the potential Encore that could come out. It could come out into either Pokemon. You could lock the Rillaboom into Fake Out if it doesn't go for the Grassy Glide to try and avoid that priority. Or you can lock the Stack Attacker into Trick Room. You've got to switch out one of your Pokemon if you want to try and avoid an Encore that could come out, and because if you don't switch out the Pokemon, then you're going to be caught with the Encore. But switching out the Stack Attacker does guarantee that Trick Room is going to stay on the field.
Yes, and switching out Stack Attacker in place for this Groudon will be bringing that Sunshine to the battlefield as well. Going to be able to apply some good pressure with something like a Precipice Blades going forward, or any kind of possible Fire-type move there to boost up with the Sun. Actually, a double switch here for William. Going to be actually putting those two Pokemon side by side that love to be together. Cherrim is going to join the field and activate that Flower Gift ability and boost up the defenses and attack here. Just putting Groudon in a great position going forward, particularly as that Calyrex has gone on the defensive, going for the Protect here, and the Whimsicott finally get to see it go for that Encore, but of course going to fail with the double switch. There's nothing to Encore here. So great play from William, capitalizing on the defensive plays and putting Groudon in a formidable position going forward.
And the Calyrex is just protected as well, so you won't be able to protect yourself to try and stall out another turn of Trick Room. It's going to be completely vulnerable to this Groudon and Cherrim, so really smart switching out both the Pokemon. If you do switch out just the Stack Attacker, and we do see that there was Encore on that Whimsicott, you could still go for the Encore into the fake outs of the Rillaboom, lock it into that instead of it going for a U-turn or a knockoff. But really smart switching out both Pokemon guarantees that no Pokemon can be Encored at this point. And now you can just start launching off those really strong attacks with the Flower Gift boosting up the Groudon. You can go for the Precipice Blades, that should be able to pick up the knockout on the Calyrex with that boost. You can go for the Heat Crash if you're concerned about the accuracy, which wouldn't be doing as much damage to this Urshifu, which just switched in.
Yeah, that's the thing. Antonio doesn't have any flying types either. Precipice Blade, as long as it can connect, will always find its mark. A little helping hand from that lovely Cherrim as it does go for the Precipice Blades, connecting on both of Antonio's Pokemon, knocking out the Whimsicott in a one-hit KO, and of course bringing that Urshifu down to its Focus Sash. You can see Antonio, big sigh as that turn went off, not happy with the situation of HP with his Pokemon at this point. And you can see him taking some notes here as well. It's lovely being able to capitalize on having these player cams as well and get a little bit of insight for you viewers at home about how our players are doing.
Yeah, it's really nice to see it for this finals, being able to see the players' reactions. And yeah, there's a really strong position coming out for William. You landed both the Precipice Blades, you knocked the Urshifu down to its Focus Sash at this point. You can just pick up the KO with the Solar Blade coming out from the Cherrim at this point. And may not even need to go for the helping hands. Maybe you do if the Calyrex comes in. Maybe the Heat Crash will be enough to pick up the knockout on the Calyrex. If it's not, you do still need to be going for either the double target with the Solar Blade or another helping hand. If you go for helping hand Precipice Blades, that should pick up the knockout on both Pokemon, but then you do risk the shaky accuracy of that Precipice Blades. If you go for the Heat Crash and it's enough to pick up the knockout on the Calyrex, you can just follow up the KO with on the Urshifu with your Cherrim with the Solar Blades. So just depends on how risky William is feeling, because they're in a very strong position at this point. Still a couple of turns of Trick Room left, so the Groudon's still going to be moving first, still being able to launch off those really powerful attacks. It just depends on whether you're confident the Groudon could pick up the knockout on the Calyrex with a Life Orb Heat Crash, because if it is, you can just go for two very safe 100% accurate moves. If you're not confident in that, you'll have to go for the helping hand Precipice Blades instead.
Yeah, we've already seen on the broadcast how accuracy can sometimes be a player's downfall. But Antonio just going on the defensive here with the Detect and Protect on the Pokemon, just burning out one turn of this Trick Room. Precipice Blades was the mode that William did opt for, but of course not going to be able to find his mark, as Cherrim goes for a helpful little Pollen Puff down into that opposing Urshifu, just in case, you know, the Precipice Blades was to miss. But Protects are just going to save Antonio from this turn.
Pollen Puff would have been enough to pick up the knockout on the Urshifu. Maybe not at this point, because it has got a bit more recovery from the grassy terrain. It's still going to be definitely in range of any Precipice Blades that could still come out from this Groudon. Still in Trick Room for another turn, so it's still going to be able to launch that attack off. Again, do you just go for the Precipice Blades, risking the misses that could come out? Do you go for the Heat Crash just to guarantee that that hit is going to come off in the final turn of Trick Room? Because it is still going to be doing very good damage. Calyrex, the Ice Rider form is very heavy, but the Shadow Rider isn't as heavy. It would still do some very reasonable damage to that Pokemon. Do you try and catch and switch in for the Urshifu? Maybe it's going to switch out into the final Pokemon in the back to try and preserve itself, but it's actually going to be Calyrex switching out into the Pokemon which in the back, which is this Nihilego.
Yep, Nihilego jumping out into the fray. Again, a Pokemon that does not want to be taking any of these Precipice Blades. So if you're Nihilego right now, you're going to hope that you can dodge out the way. But Grassy Glide coming out, obviously the priority there on the battlefield, with a cheeky critical hit going down into that Urshifu, just removes it from the fray for Antonio. As Groudon does go for that Heat Crash, going to be able to find its mark down onto that opposing Nihilego and picks up the solid one-hit KO, despite not being very effective. This Groudon is not here to mess around. It wants to get that victory, and you can see the HP dwindling there from that Life Orb as well. So big heavy hitter, this Groudon. It's been an absolute destructive powerhouse for William here.
Yes, it's just been on a rampage. As soon as Trick Room was set up, switch in the Groudon, and then that's all you need. Just firing off Precipice Blades, fire off the Heat Crash. At this point, you just get to go for another Heat Crash into the Calyrex. And with a Helping Hand boost or a Grassy Glide, chip damage as well, that should be able to pick up the knockout on the Calyrex. You shouldn't be able to KO the Groudon with the Astral Barrage, especially with the Flower Gift still being active on the field. So yeah, really strong first game coming out for William. And not too much that Antonio could have done there once the Trick Room was set up, once the Encore didn't go into the Trick Room to reverse it once again. Switching out into the Groudon, that was all the momentum that William needed. Just being able to sweep through with the Groudon at this point. At least you get to reveal the information on the Cherrim that it does have access to the Grassy Glide. It does make sense when you've got a Rillaboom on your own team to be able to make use of that. But at this point, yeah, Antonio's taking all the time just to think for their next game plan, because at this point they will be losing this game. If the Groudon just goes for a Heat Crash, whether the Cherrim goes for a Helping Hand or a Grassy Glide, just get that extra bit of damage as well. So you're going to have to really put a stop to the Trick Room coming out. Rillaboom and Stack Attacker is a very good way of getting that Trick Room set up. You know that there's Encore on the Whimsicott, almost certainly not going to be a Taunt that will be on there. You don't often carry Encore and Taunt together. Maybe the Urshifu needs to be led this time. It is Focus Sash, so it doesn't actually care too much about facing down the opposing Rillaboom. It could still be faked out, but close combat would still deal with the stack attacker very easily, putting a stop to that Trick Room. Maybe you need to bring your Incineroar to this match so that you can match the fake outs, or your own Rillaboom, depending on how you've trained it. If it's faster than the opposing Rillaboom, you'd be able to go for the fake outs into their Rillaboom, and maybe if you led with your own Urshifu, you could go for the close combat into the stack attacker. But Trick Room does need to be stopped in the next games.
Yeah, Trick Room has definitely been the downfall here for Antonio, but the Astral Barrage doing some good damage to both the Cherrim and the Groudon here. But Cherrim able to go for that Grassy Glide into Calyrex, do enough damage to take up below 50% as Groudon can follow up with that Heat Crash. We've seen how devastating it can be. It's easily going to be able to get the KO. So William will be taking the first game in this set. But one thing I have to say for Antonio that I just kind of want to credit is being able to see him really think about that game too. Took all the time knowing that Calyrex was going to switch, onto the battlefield. It was his only Pokemon remaining. And then as the turn played out, was taking it down to the last couple of seconds and have both the teams up in front of him, just to really think about those strategies. And I'm sure he was thinking about some of the questions you were kind of asking there, Jamie, about how to switch around the Trick Room and how to stop it going up. And I think as well, Stack Attacker came out very early doors, set that Trick Room up, and then disappeared. We didn't even see the Stack Attacker take advantage of Trick Room. It was all Groudon and Cherrim, which I think is quite phenomenal when you think that it was just a double switch. So great play there by William to kind of be able to capitalize on that turn and just swing the momentum of the game in his favor.
Yeah, and the only damage that the Groudon was taking was Life Orb recoil as well. Because it was able to catch the Calyrex going for that Protect on that first turn. It could have launched off an Astral Barrage at that point. So it did switch into the Cherrim at the same time, so it's still taken less damage thanks to that Flower Gift still being active. But then if you're still not doing any damage to the Groudon, it's going to be able to go on the rampage that we saw it do in that first game. Just launching off those Precipice Blades with the Helping Hand, that's going to pick up a knockout on pretty much every Pokemon, apart from maybe that Rillaboom. We did see it's still enough to pick up the knockout on the Whimsicott as well with that Flower Gift and the Helping Hand boost as well. So maybe Rillaboom does need to be coming to this match if you're on Antonio's side of the field. It can match the fake outs on the opposing Rillaboom. You can also hit that Groudon not really caring too much about the Trick Room, because you can still go for the priority Grassy Glides. If your Rillaboom is outspeeding or underspeeding in the Trick Room, then you can still go for the Grassy Glides to be able to do some very good damage. If it's got Wood Hammer as well, that would be doing a huge chunk of damage to the Groudon. Could potentially pick up a one-hit knockout as well. You've also got access to the Incineroar, which can be intimidating the Groudon. If you get one Intimidate down onto the Groudon, then it's not going to be able to pick up just one-hit knockouts. It won't be able to just sweep through the entirety of Trick Room like it did end up doing in that first game. So maybe you do need to switch it up to go to your Rillaboom, go to your Incineroar. They're very tried and true Pokemon. They're able to stall out Trick Room very well with the pivoting and the fake outs, with the Grassy Glides, being able to not even care about Trick Room, going down into the opposing Groudon. Intimidate can come out from the Incineroar to be able to put a stop to it, going on the rampage in this game too.
Yeah, I was going to say the Rillaboom and Incineroar combination has been tried and tested. It's very effective against Trick Room. But Groudon and Entei are going to be the leads for William, as the Incineroar does come out as a nice adjustment for Antonio, paired up with that Calyrex once again. And this time Calyrex not facing a Trick Room setter.
No, it's not, but it's facing down the Entei at this point. We haven't confirmed what item it's going to be, but on these teams, it is very commonly Choice Scarfed. Does have access to Crunch that it can go for. And we've seen that the Life Orb is on this Calyrex, so it's not going to be the Focus Sash variety. You can just pick up a knockout with that Crunch, because you're not, of course, not going to be intimidated by that Incineroar, thanks to the Inner Focus ability. Can't be faked out either, so it's a very free Crunch into that Calyrex slot if William wants to go for it. And then maybe you just get faked out on the Groudon, but that's still threatening a KO, and no damage coming out from Antonio's side of the field. So still a very awkward position for Antonio. Very, very good adjustment for William, not even opting for that Stack Attacker to go for the Trick Room, instead relying on the slightly faster mode, potentially if that Entei is carrying the Choice Scarf. If it's carrying the Assault Vest, it will still be able to shrug off the Astral Barrage coming out from the Calyrex, but it is going to be that Choice Scarf variety, and that Calyrex is gone.
Oh, yeah, goodbye Calyrex. It's been nice seeing you in this game too, but I think it's time for you to retire right now, going straight back into its Pokeball, and Antonio loses his Restricted in the very first move of this game too. Precipice Blades as well, single target down into that opposing Incineroar. Able to survive though, that's not something you see every day. That Intimidate paying off.
Yeah, that was single target Precipice Blades as well. The Calyrex had been KO'd, so it's able to get the parting shot off.
Yeah, exactly. Gets that parting shot off, and just going to be able to retreat for Antonio, bring that Intimidate back a little later on. You can see how beneficial it is as well. We saw the Groudon in game one just picking up solid one-hit KOs, and then against a fire type, single target, I would have expected that to pick up the KO, but Intimidate really working, and also credit to the bulk of that Incineroar.
Yeah, and so now it's going to be able to get another Intimidate down onto the opposing Groudon as well. Rillaboom's going to join the field from that parting shot, and it's going to have the access to grass type attacks, going to be able to do some good damage to the Groudon, because you know that the Entei is at least locked into that crunch now, not going to be going for any fire type moves into your Rillaboom, so it's a little bit safer going into this is turn 2. Depends on how fast the Rillaboom is, if it's going to be carrying Wood Hammer as well. If it's only carrying Grassy Glide as its grass type attack, not going to really care about the speeds at this point, but you've got another Intimidate onto the Groudon, so it should be able to survive a Heat Crash that would be coming out from the Groudon, because it is at -2 stages of attack at this point. But still, we're going to be able to do some very good damage with its grass type attacks. The Entei is really not going to be doing too much at all at this point, because Crunch is not going to be doing much damage to the Rillaboom. Incineroar, it's got parting shot on it as well, so it's probably going to be switching out into one of the Pokemon that is waiting in the back, because you do want to reset what you've locked yourself into. If you locked yourself into Sacred Fire or Flareblitz at this point, so that's going to be enough for the rest of the game, because you've taken care of the Calyrex now.
Yeah, and I think it's wise, like you said there, Jamie, reset the locked-in move choice on that Entei. You want to take advantage of that lovely sunshine with something like a Sacred Fire, particularly when there's that Rillaboom on the side of the field. There's actually a Rillaboom apiece at the moment, as William has decided to switch in his own Rillaboom. As the Rillaboom on Antonio's side is going to catch this on the switch in to about 50% damage with the U-turn, and Antonio going to, like we said, that tried and tested strategy of switching out your fake out Pokemon users so that you constantly are able to rotate them in and apply pressure going forward. We're going to see the Whimsicott join the fray for Antonio here to help out the Incineroar, that's also going to leave the field with one of those classic switching moves, going for the parting shot, just negating the attack and special attack of that Rillaboom, and allowing Antonio the opportunity to bring the Rillaboom back into the match to still apply that pressure to the opposing Groudon.
Yeah, it was a good play from Antonio, getting the double pivot there, catching the protect of the opposing Groudon. But now you've got Rillaboom versus Rillaboom, and we haven't confirmed the speeds on them at this point. So you're going to get the Grassy Terrain recovery on the Rillaboom on William's side of the field, but because the Rillaboom on Antonio's didn't take any damage, we don't get to confirm the speeds at this point. So it's going to be a bit awkward going for any fake outs this turn. Maybe you just go for the fake out into the Whimsicott and the fake out into the Groudon, just to effectively waste the fake outs coming out from both Pokemon. But if you're on William's side of the field, if you go for the fake out into the Whimsicott, you can stop the Encore that can come out into the Groudon. But if the Rillaboom on Antonio's side of the field is faster, you can always just fake out the Groudon, Encore that, fake out the Rillaboom, Encore the Groudon as well into that protect. Maybe you want to be switching out the Groudon because it's taken those Intimidates now as well. It is under threat of the opposing Encore as well. But the Rillaboom on William's side of the field is going to be faking out first.
Yep, able to catch that Whimsicott before it can go for a potential Encore there, as Groudon can capitalize and go for this Heat Crash in the sun down into that opposing Whimsicott and just remove it from the field straight away, obviously taking its Life Orb damage as well. But once again, William just playing so strongly on the offensive here, making sure that Groudon can still pick up these key KOs. U-turn going to come out from the Rillaboom, and as we know, it did 50% last time. It's going to be able to pick up the KO this time, solidly removing the Rillaboom from William's side, as Rubo on Antonio's side, lots of Rillabooms in this sentence, will then go back into its Pokeball to allow the Incineroar to come out. But looks like the Pokemon advantage here, it's a little bit difficult for Antonio. You're only stuck with your Rillaboom and your Incineroar, and you now no longer have the utility to switch them out with those U-turns and parting shots, and the fake out is going to be, you know, there's only going to be one more chance for them to do that in this game too.
Even be able to fake out an Entei that could be switching in as well, and you're not going to be intimidated by the Incineroar. At this point, you just get to go for fire type moves with your Entei for the rest of the game. Doesn't matter if the Groudon's taking its third Intimidate at this point. Still going to be able to pick up the knockout on the Incineroar with the Precipice Blades. It would do some respectable damage to the Rillaboom with the Heat Crash as well, but it's really just now down to the Entei to just click fire type moves into either the Rillaboom or the Incineroar. Incineroar would be able to probably survive a fire type move. Maybe if you switch the Groudon into the Cherrim, then you're going to guarantee the knockouts onto the Incineroar with the Entei going for any fire type moves that it definitely does want to lock into at this point, because the Rillaboom is still sitting at full HP. Incineroar's looking pretty low, so you can be dealing with that at some point with your Entei just going for the fire type moves. Doesn't really matter if your Groudon gets faked out at this point. Doesn't matter if it gets doubled up with the Grassy Glides and Flareblitz as well. You can even just switch it out at this point. It does look like it is going to be that Cherrim, so Entei is going to be picking up a knockout with any type of fire type attack it goes for this turn.
Yeah, you can see William nodding with satisfaction at this point, seeing how the final turns of this game are going to play out. Cherrim joins the field and is delighted to be here. I love the way it bounces on the battlefield, as the Incineroar will go for the fake out into it. Rillaboom is going to go for that Grassy Glide into what was the Groudon, but Cherrim's super happy to be here and take the damage for its partner Pokemon very successfully as well. Entei is going to go for that Flare Blitz into the Rillaboom, pick up a solid KO against it thanks to the boost of the sun. And obviously Cherrim joining as well with Flower Gift, helping out that Entei even further. And this is the thing, the Incineroar, there's really not a lot that it can do, as you've kind of marked out for us here, Jamie. The Entei is just going to be too formidable for it, in the sense that Incineroar doesn't have a lot of HP left. The Entei can still deal some good damage, and as soon as that Groudon comes back into the fray, there's really not a lot that Incineroar can do.
Should just be the Entei at this point, with the Flower Gift, with the Sun, and a Helping Hand boost on the Cherrim. That Flare Blitz should still be knocking out this Incineroar at this point. So this game was pretty much over on that first turn, just knocking out the Calyrex immediately with the crunch. Maybe Antonio predicting that there wouldn't be a crunch, maybe expecting the William to expect the switch out, but just picking up the knockout with the crunch effectively sealed this game on the first turn.
Exactly, there's the Helping Hand. Cherrim here just delighted to be on the battlefield as it helps out that Flare Blitz in the Sun into the Incineroar, which is going to be enough to pick up the KO, meaning that William is going to be victorious in this match, drawing level here. Italy, Spain, 2-2 at this stage.
Yeah, and I believe that this was the match where there was some beef between the two players, and I think Antonio was victorious in that second round in the first group stages as well. So William able to get that revenge and put it at 2-2 for Spain and Italy, going into over the halfway point. At this point, they are still tied.
Yeah, and we love a rematch. We love a little bit of drama when these players come together. It adds to the entertainment, to the tension. But what a phenomenal match. And I think throughout this entire broadcast so far, correct me if I'm wrong, but haven't they all been 2-0 victories?
I believe so far. So yeah, it's very impressive coming out. Even in the finals, the players that are taking the victory are able to effectively comfortably take the victory with the 2-0s instead of the 2-1s. So a really strong plays coming out from these players in the final, which is exactly the time you want to be seeing that coming out from your players.
Exactly, and seeing Spain come out 2-0 straight away, very strong start, but then Italy have now drawn it level, and this is where things get very intense. There are 3 more matches to go, and potentially we're going to be able to see all 3 actually being so significant towards this victory. I just honestly can't wait to see it. I'm very thankfully going to be stepping away from the mic now so I can sit and relax and enjoy the match while I can scream at my TV with everything going on. But this has been the most phenomenal final. I couldn't have asked for anything more at this point. Spain and Italy are really putting on an amazing show.
Yeah, it definitely has been an amazing show, and I'm sure it will continue to be an amazing show, as we will be bringing the last 3 games to you after this short break, which we are going to be cutting to. So make sure you are staying